Taking this blindfold off to see what this life's all about. Threw my virtues to the ground, drinking from the devil's cup. Take that pill, drink it down, flashing lights all around. High as hell, drunk like I finally don't give a fuck. 'Cause I'm breaking all the rules tonight. Not going down without.
Okay, so this is the Overpass Live. My name is Eric and I make apps. Sorry I'm a little bit late here. Just for some reason I don't think the audio is playing at the beginning of this thing anymore. So I was trying to figure out what that was and I don't know what it is. I'll have to investigate it a little bit earlier than like 2 minutes before the live stream starts. But you know, I guess I'm just procrastinating on that. I completely always forget about it till right before the live stream and that's when I check it out. Hey Azimuth, hey Yannick, how you guys doing? So this week has been... it's been a good week. This week, I started waking up early again. So I think last week in the live stream, somebody said how, you know, when I used to do the Snapchat, getting up at 4:30 every morning. I used to get up at 4:30 every morning for like weekdays, but for like, 15 years. So it was like a long time. And since I moved into this office, I started just sleeping in a bit later. I started sleeping in until like, at first it was 5:30, then it was 6, and then it was 7. It's never later than 7. But so I just started coming in and thinking, at least I was getting 8 hours sleep a night. And I thought, I feel a lot better. But then I wasn't getting as much done. So this week on Monday morning, even though it was a bank holiday here, I got up at 4:30. Alarm went off. Came into the office and everything. And it's actually really nice. It's something I remember why I like doing it, especially when it's still a little bit dark in the mornings and you get... it's so quiet everywhere. In this new office building here, it's just totally empty. It's totally empty till about 7 or 8. So it's just like I have the whole building to myself. And I even did one of the videos I did here in the office building because there was nobody around and it was kind of nice. So that was cool. So hey, Jahan Zeb, Josie, how's it going? Hitchum, how's it going? Shiraz, hello. Yannick, just watch your vid about I hate these kinds of marketing too. Yeah, you know what? I didn't want to just go on about it because it was kind of negative, but like I've been looking into doing something like the market, like a webinar. And everybody said, you should try webinars. And I'm looking at it, and it seems like the whole thing with webinars, and you read all these books about it, it's like everybody's saying this is what people fall for, and this is how this is how you get them. And you're thinking, wait a second, this is how you're getting me. And then you think, well, I don't like being treated that way, and other people probably don't either. And it's almost like a lot of the marketing, it seems like we're going for the lowest common denominator people, and that's not really the way that I want to do it. I'm still thinking about doing some sort of online course or something. But the whole webinar thing, it just seems so sleazy. And it doesn't have to be sleazy. Some of them aren't. But just I was watching some of them, and it was like, like we're all on the one side of things. And apps are the same way. Like if I talk to somebody who, like we talk to a new client or something, and they come in and they say, I want to do a social media app because for some reason people like social media, and it's like they don't like social media, but they think for some reason other people seem to like this and I want to get in on this craze. And it's stupid. It's almost like you don't understand the motivations behind your target users, but you think you can manipulate them anyway. And that's sort of what it felt like when I was watching these webinars and stuff. So yeah, it just gets to me. And it seems like it's so prolific. It's so everywhere now. And that book, .com Secrets, which is, I said it's a good book, and Expert Secrets, very good books, but so many people are taking it literally and doing everything exactly as it says in there. And it's just so, it's just so transparent. So Meow Studios, hey, it's 31st. Hey, how's it going? Hussein, how's it going? Shiraz, love your videos. Very informative. Thank you. Oh, I can't see all the comments here. Here we go. The videos are so informative. Thank you very much. I'm glad. Thank you very much for being a part of it. Last week we reached 12,000 subscribers, and we're already up to like 12,400 this week. There's been a lot of people who joined us this week, which is great. That's fantastic. But I start getting stage fright again. Right? Like when more people start subscribing, I start thinking, oh God, make sure I say everything right. And then I thought, oh, that's it. I'm just gonna say what I normally say, and if it's stupid, then it's stupid, and if it's not, it's not. But just to be honest. So like complaining about webinars, like that was one thing. I think I complain about webinars. What if somebody's into webinars and they're gonna be insulted by it? And I think, well, actually, you know what? Yeah, it would be like, you know, like just, you know, chatting with you guys. I can't not chat with you guys because I'm afraid that somebody's gonna be upset about it. Let's see. Meow Studio says, Eric, you haven't told us in ages what your next app will be. I haven't told you. Yeah, you don't talk much about your own projects anymore. No, I don't really. So we started, I don't really have any projects on the horizon. I'm sorry to say that, but we started one. So we had two big projects last year. One was called Project Viaduct, which was going to be an app builder software similar to, you know, Appy Pie, Good Barber. And we went a long way through it. We spent 6 months, 8 months on it, and then I was doing client work. So I was doing the client work. And it was really good. I mean, what we got done was pretty impressive, but then it was like I got to the point where you realize that it's going to be bigger to do than you have time to do. And even if we did release a version that worked, there would be so many different permutations of it. And then when 4.3 came in, or not 4.3, 4.2.6 or 0.9, which talked about the wizards and everything, I thought this is just going to get more and more complicated. But we learned a lot doing it. You know, having the whole web interface and the WSWig and using Mac in the cloud to build, that was very cool. So we had these, we were using Ionic as the build mechanism, or as a thing. So it was like in an iframe, doing Ionic, drag and drop, everything like that. And then when you set build, it would submit it to Mac in the cloud, and that would do the build process by passing in whatever the username and password of the person. So downloading the keys and everything. That really worked well. But there was no way we could do it. And that was like a big, like giving up on that was hard because I thought, God, we've come so far, but you know, we weren't going to be able to keep up with it, and it was just too big of a project. And then another one we did is one we're working on, and I say we're working on it like nobody's actually coding on it right now, but it's like still there. It's called Custodian. And Custodian is one of my names. It's a name that I use for projects that are in development. I have a lot of projects that have been called Custodian ever since I was in the investment banks. When I propose a new project and I write up the spec, I said we're going to call it Custodian, and then usually somebody says that's stupid and moves on. So one of the first apps I did was called Custodian, and it was like it was an Android app. This is like several years ago. It's like maybe our third or fourth app. And so it was like basically what I wanted to do was have Android have the web server within Android to be able to serve things up so that I could go to a computer. I'm on the local network on my phone. It will say, there's your IP address. I type in my IP address. It will serve the web pages from the phone, and then you could just go through and have access to everything that the app has access to. So you could like send SMS messages. You could do all the stuff counter. There's actually something else that came out while we were coming up with this, which was called Air something. I forget what it was called, AirPlay. Right, and but we were doing that, and the problem was the developers I had, they weren't very good. I mean, they were the first development team I had, and the code was really bad. They were getting to grips with Android, but they didn't know web very much. So I wasn't coding on it because I was still contracting. So I wanted to be like jQuery. This is how long ago it was. I wanted to have like a jQuery front end, and it goes through and it just does everything for you. In the end, we changed it to just do SMS because I figured I realized that we're going to be working on this thing for the next 30 years at this pace. So just do SMS. You could read SMS and send SMS. So we called it SMS Custodian, and I don't even know how many. I don't think it's still live. I think I took it off the market. I just one of those songs, But so that was. But why did I start talking about that? Oh, because Custodian. So we have one that we have in development, kind of in development. It's on hold because we do so much client stuff, called Custodian, and that's more of an enterprise application. So something that I don't want to talk about it too much because someone will steal my idea and then come back and blame me because it doesn't work. So like, not like they'll steal my idea and then it'll be super successful and steal the market out from underneath, because I think they're probably, it's not, I mean, it's unique enough, but it needs marketing. It needs the contacts and stuff that I have and that we're building with, so something more for clients. But I would hate for somebody to steal it thinking, it's reached gold or whatever, and then they spend all this time building it and then it doesn't take off, because that's a risk that I'm gonna take once I get the time to do it. See, sorry, where was I? I'm sorry about this. See, this is the hard thing about doing the live stream, is trying to keep up with reading the questions and talk to you guys at the same time. Let's see. Rishi says hi. Hey, how's it going? Imran, hey, how's it going? React Native or Android Studio? Android Studio is not a language, and React Native is. I mean, I guess React Native is a framework, but and Android Studio is a development tool. So you could do React Native in Android Studio. You could do Flutter in Android Studio. In fact, if you read the documentation on Android Studio, it tells you the documentation on Flutter. It says Android Studio is one of the tools. So you build it in there, even though you're running it on both iOS and Android. You use that as a development tool, and it's based on IntelliJ. But if what you're asking is using native Android, either Kotlin or Java, I like React Native because you can go to iOS. That's just me. However, we have a lot of React Native apps on at the moment, and I talked about this on an upcoming video. You have to learn how to build it. So a lot of times my whole thing is I get the React Native code down and I just build it, and there's always a dependency missing. There's always something. So one of the things I like about Flutter, it seems to be more self-contained than that. It seems like every time I build anything in Cordova or Ionic or React Native, is always some, I'm using NVM to say which node version am I using, which one was this built in. Am I using node 7, node 4? What am I using? And then also, what are the dependencies? Is the package.json up to date and everything like that? And usually it's pretty good, but there's always something that I'm missing, and it's just always that. And then like if you update Xcode, then sometimes that'll break things. So, but that's my only problem with using something like React Native. That's my opinion. I could be wrong, but that's just we've been doing that a lot lately. And also, I have some native Android applications, and they're just a bit clunky. It depends on the config. I like the idea of Flutter because I don't like using the XML interface. I don't like using that layout that they have. A lot of times they try to do it as a drag and drop thing in the Android Studio, and that never really works very well for me. I just think it's clunky. It's like going from a Windows like a Windows form app to a website. A website is fluid, and you remove something and it reclaims the space, all that kind of stuff. And if you have something on a form based thing, then it might not. But it depends on which layout. If you use linear layout or whatever, all the different layouts that you have. So how's that for rambling? Hitchum says, there's something wrong with my ad mob, dude. For one of my apps, the number of daily users has been tripled, but the revenue is still the same. Are the impressions going up, Hitchum? I mean, when you say that your daily users have tripled, are your impressions going up the same? Are you still getting the same number of requests? Not your impressions. You still getting the same number of requests? Because it might be that the requests are going through, but they're not being served. And then if that's the case, what I would do is look to see which country those are in, because you might be serving them in another country, like let's say China, where you have requests coming through and it might not being served. We had somebody last week saying that they had that kind of issue. So is that the kind of thing you could do? Is it Jahan Zeb? Somebody commented on the live stream that I should mention the timestamps on these messages, but I don't quite know how to do it. So I'm going to try to read the whole question, because when people go back and watch the live stream later, although they should have been here, right? Then they'll know what the question is. So Jahan Zeb says, which app category do you think is best nowadays? I tried the different ones. I think the one that's best is the one that's most relevant to your application, that's the least crowded. So if your application can fit into more than one category, find the one that's least crowded and switch around a little bit. Don't go into medical category. Oh, that's what I did. I went into the medical category thinking that works, and it really worked well for me. It was because we were in the communication category before that, and it never really ranked, but we went into the medical one. It was it got up to number 8, and then I got it suspended, and I moved it out of there, and it really didn't make any difference. So I'm not sure if that's the case. So Minute Codes, hey, how you doing? How's it going, Minute Codes? Let's see. Meow Studio. Sorry, I'm trying to go in order, and I'm sorry if I'm way up on the list. Meow Studio says Hitchum Raf depends on the geo. It's not tier 1. Doesn't matter ads wise. Yeah, that's what I was saying. It depends on the geographics. Tim L says, hey Eric. Jennifer F. Hey Eric. Hey, how's it going? Minute Code says, I am a beginner Android dev. I am facing a major problem in graphic designing. My app logos look identical because I can't get my hands on anything better. What would you suggest? This was my issue too, was getting a designer. I designed the logo, the Overpass logo myself. We are changing it. We are in the process of changing it finally. But I designed the Overpass logo myself, and I liked it. I still think it's good. And everybody who says I like it too, they're being very polite because I'm not a designer. So one of the best things I did was hire a designer. I've hired several designers over the years. My current one, Sandy, she's been with me for over 4 years, maybe nearly 4.5 years. She's been with me. I didn't want to let her go. It was hard. Everyone says, do you really need a full-time designer? I said, it's going to be fun to find out, isn't it? So we could produce all these different things, and if we have an idea, we could just run with it. Before that, I was going to Upwork, and Upwork is a good choice too, but it's really hard to find somebody with the style that you want. And also because you're based on time, they might give you something and you don't like it and you keep sending it back, and then you got to pay for that time. And if you do it based on fixed price, then it gets very unfun for them. And so we did. I hired a designer through Upwork. I hired one designer through Upwork who did the graphics for Agent X and Chemistry Alley, and he was like a comic book artist, and they were so good. They were excellent. They were like I was so excited about them. And then we hired another designer to do a running sprite. So one of the parts of this app, which is like an algebra game, I wanted to have like them running and diving and jumping, and so I hired a guy to do the sprites. He said, "Oh yeah, I could do it." He was in the Philippines, I think. Yeah, he was in the Philippines, and he spent ages. Like that's the thing with Upwork. You hire somebody, and they've got several projects on at the same time. And you have to keep chasing them because the developers are waiting, and then finally he gives me something, and it didn't flow. I mean, it wasn't an animated sprite. In fact, it looked like it was like limping and everything. There was like several frames missing from it. It was a very bad thing. My policy is that I still pay. I still paid him. He didn't get a very good review, but I still paid him because he did the work, and you pay for the work that gets done. And but I had to hire somebody else to do it. And I could have said, "No, I'm not going to pay for this," and everything like that. But I just, if they put the time in, see, if they're incompetent, if they're lazy and don't deliver, then I'm not going to pay. But if they're incompetent, then I just feel bad for them. I just pay them anyway. I feel like you got bigger issues than people not paying you. So that's my thing. So I once had I was working a contract where we didn't actually have a contract in place. So we never drew one up. I was working for them, and every month I think I was afraid of whether or not I would get paid that month. I think, what if something happens? What if I do upset him somehow and he might not pay me? But he would say that he always pays. And he would say that for anything. I mean, he was talking about something, and I said, "You should hire a Russian hacker to go through and do whatever." And he says, "Yeah." I says, "But make sure you pay them, otherwise, And he says, "I always pay. I always pay." And that was his thing. He always said. So that's what I say. I always pay. So regardless, that's rambling on there a little bit. Andro Gamer says, Andro Gamer, where'd he go? How to start Android app development. There are tons of resources, right? I can't point you in direction of one book. A lot of people say, "Can you please do a tutorial on Android Studio?" There are so many excellent resources out there, right? You don't even need to take a course. You don't even need to buy the book. Although I've always been in the camp that if you buy the book or take the course, rather than get bits and pieces all over the place, like getting like random chapters of a book in different orders, you could get everything and go from the beginning to the end, even though a lot of times they're filled with filler. Let's give a history of Android for chapter 1, but you don't need to know that. You just need to know, you get into the hello world, how do you set up your environment, or they'll tell you how to install Android Studio for an entire chapter, and you don't really need to know. I mean, it's kind of easy to figure out, but you need to know is how to get started and all that stuff. And the reason I think that books are good and courses are good, because they cover the things that you might not think are important, like error handling and just good code practices and stuff like that. Let's see. Ismail Khan says, "Hi Eric, how can I direct contact you or get a quote on a gaming application?" So if you go to our website, www.overpass.co.uk, we have a form that you can fill in to do that. And what happens is, if you fill in the form, it goes to Rowena, who's on our team, and she'll go through and evaluate it. it'll probably come to me, or we'll go to one of the developers. It will probably come to me, and then we'll see whether or not we could do it, and we'll give you a ballpark quote, and then that way we can decide whether or not we'd continue. So the ballpark quote, and I've done videos about this, is probably the most important thing you could do as a developer if you do client work, because you need to establish that early on. You need to establish, like, we think it's going to cost, like if I think something's going to cost £6,000 or £8,000, and the client thinks it's going to cost, £1,000, then we don't want to go through several meetings before we get to that realization or that discrepancy between the two, because then it's like, I'm more like, how do I convince them that it's worth this much? And they're like, we both wasted so much time. So we try to give that ballpark early on. It's better that we decide whether or not we can work with each other and go forward than it is to wait. And I have developers development companies that I've worked with before, that it was like pulling teeth to get them to give a quote on something. And they're still that way. Actually, some of the ones I work with, how much would it cost you to do this? And I'll go, so this. What do you need to know? I just need a ballpark. And they're like, ooh, I don't know, Eric. Let's have a meeting. Let's have several meetings. And I was like, oh, you know what? Never mind. So how long would it take me to do it? That's why I base most of my quotes on how long would it take me to do it and how much would I charge for it. And then sometimes we have to do that. So let's see. I'm sorry, the Russian name. I'm sorry. Is it easy to convert a website into progressive web application? It should be, I'd imagine. I have not done it, to be honest with you. So I would imagine that, because you just have to add the manifest file, right? You have to add a manifest file, and I don't know if it's a hosted website. If you have the source code, it probably is. Not if it's PHP, because that's running its own language inside. But if you're talking about a static HTML page, like you're using, say, like React Native or something, I would imagine you could be able to. It depends on what your definition of easy is, I think. Diego Dureas says, hey Eric, what do you use for developing PWAs? I've never done PWAs. I've played around with them a little bit, but I haven't done it. If I was going to do PWAs, I would do Ionic. Even though I've done a video on Ionic, so we're not using it anymore, but we are using a little bit on a few projects, and it depends. I still have my concerns about it. But I still have my concerns about Ionic, but it is a really good framework. And if you're going to do PWAs, then my concerns go out the window. My concerns are more about Apple's approval and using the web view and everything like that. But PWAs, you don't need the web view because you're not compiling an app. It's perfect. So, Mega Man 2016, hey, how's it going? Hey Eric, what are your thoughts on Xamarin? Have you ever been a .NET developer? Have I ever been a .NET developer? Heck yeah, I've been a .NET developer. I was a .NET developer for years. I was probably a .NET developer before you were even born. Well, no, maybe not. But I was I started off as a VBA. So I started off VBA and Visual Basic, and then I was Visual Basic 5. And then Visual Basic 6, and then ASP pages, classic ASP, and then going into C#. And I was a C# developer for many years. And even then, so we're doing the Razor and the MVC framework. I hated using web forms. So that was the one thing I hated about .NET. But I love using C#. C# is probably my favorite language, even though I haven't used it in a while. And then we moved to SharePoint. So the company I was contracting with, we moved to SharePoint, and SharePoint sucks. If anybody ever tries to get you to work on a SharePoint project, just don't. Right? I just turned 40 years old, and I was feeling old. I had this back spasms. Like just before I turned 40, we went on a family holiday on a canal boat, which is this boat that travels like 2 miles an hour down the canals, and it was just sort of, I just was not, it was slow, and I just thought, oh my God, I just feel so old. And then I had these back pains, which just got worse and worse, to the fact where I couldn't stand up. It hurt when I breathed, and I had to take like a week off work because my back completely went out. And then we went to, and then we were working on SharePoint, and SharePoint was so slow. So I just really, that's the reason I left. I got into JavaScript, and JavaScript, I love working with JavaScript, and I think there's a lot of similarities between, obviously C# and Java and JavaScript, although, JavaScript's a dynamic language. So if I have an object and I added something to the object, I don't need to declare that variable first. I don't need to declare that property first. I could just do that. I could attach a property at runtime that goes through and just does that. The downside of that is I can misspell something, which accidentally adds a property, and everything goes through. So that's why you have stuff like TypeScript, which goes back into that whole type stuff. So now, have I ever used Xamarin? When I was looking into Xamarin, that was initially what I looked into, and I think it looks really cool. The reason I never got into it because at first it cost a lot of money, and I think it's not expensive anymore. It might even be free now. I'm not even sure. But I like the idea. I like the idea of doing Xamarin. But it seems like Xamarin, rather than promote themselves as a cross-platform framework, which is what I was looking for, they're like, use your existing skills. And I think a lot of the frameworks do that. They're more focused on, this is your skills already as a developer. And I'm like, I can learn new skills. But that whole cross-platform thing is what I want to do. So that was just my opinion on that. But it looks really cool. And it looks really cool because it keeps up with the framework. And it seems like when new features come out on Android, they're right there. Unlike other, I mean, most frameworks are they're really quick to it. But but Xamarin, I think, is because they have those partnerships in place. ST says, have you ever created any apps that generate revenue on your own? Yes, I have. That's most of the revenue. So ST, the revenue that comes in consistently is the apps that we've created. So those are the ones that are not client applications, and they just, they generate revenue. So every morning I get up and I see it makes. So I've done a few where I've done like the daily revenue reports, and that's not client applications. Those are our applications, and they just keep coming in to the point where it's like, for a while it was around 150 pounds a day. Now it's like 100, 110, something like that. So there's 3 different ads revenue sources, which AdMob is the biggest one. And then we have Google Play sales, which is in-app purchases or full purchases. And then we have iOS in-app purchases. And that used to be like 40 pounds a day. And then I removed most of them because Apple is being crazy with that kind of stuff. And so it's like 8 to 12 pounds a day on that side. So Link says, nice. Hey, how's it going? Like self-made apps without a team. Oh, like self-made without a team. No, I don't think. Most of the time I have a team with me. It's either the designer. I've made apps that. I've made apps that generate revenue. Not a lot of revenue, but yes. Hey, Josie. I still call you Josie. Let's see. Left Geo. Okay. Where am I? Left Geo. Hey, how's it going? Once you publish a successful app, does it pay you lifetime through ads, or do you have to spend more time updating it, etc.? It pays. Well, yeah, it pays every day. I don't know lifetime. I don't know if anything's gonna last lifetime. I mean, you do anything, at some point it's gonna fall out. There's gonna be a competitor that knocks it off the top spot. There's gonna be something that happens that causes it to go away. There could be a platform upgrade where I have to go through and update it. So it's not like something where you have to, like you're going to. That's the nice thing about it as passive income, is you don't have to keep updating it. That continues to generate revenue even though I'm not working. When I'm sleeping, it's still making money, right? So the question is, why don't you just make more of those? And we try. So a lot of the stuff we keep putting out, new applications and new games. But it's been a while since I put out anything new. But it's consistent. It keeps coming in, which is really nice. So, if I wanted to, I could stop working altogether, let the whole team go, and then just have like a little stipend of money that comes in. The downside of it is I don't know when it's going to stop. I don't have any control over it, but I wouldn't have any control over a job either. You don't know when you get fired or anything like that. But sometimes you're working on a client project and you're working really hard to meet a deadline. And you're working, trying to get everything done, and then but you still have this other thing over here that's just like money dripping in. So which is really nice. You start to see the contrast between the two methods here. So if you have to choose between passive income and active income, always go with passive income, because that's the best. I mean, it's just so nice, but it's harder to achieve, obviously. So let's see. Hussein Goktas says, Goktas says, could you check my app page? Yeah, it is my first app, and I don't know if I do things right. It's called Epic Bridge Builder, by the way. Okay, so we're gonna have to look at Epic Build Bridge, excuse me, Epic Bridge Builder. All right, so let me just share my screen. Is this on Google Play? We'll find out here. And this is for Hussein Goktas apps. Epic Bridge Builder. Here we go. Is it, oh yeah, it must be HG Games. Looks right. Okay, so let's see. You got a video. That's good. You got the bits here. Changing levels. I think it looks good. I mean, what are the ages for? Let's have a look at the video. Epic Bridge Builder. So under the puzzle category. Okay. Bridge. I think I'm just not sure about the graphics. Okay. Oh, cool. I think the video is good. I think how's it doing? How's it doing, Hussein? Hussein? Look. I think it looks okay, but so what we could do is have a look. So let's have a look at the. So you don't have any reviews yet, so that's something. When did you come out? When was it released? Yesterday. So that's why you don't have any reviews. So we're not going to be able to really see the keyword rankings yet because it's so new, but this might be something we can have a look at next week. Although if anybody has any feedback on it, please let Hussein know there. Let's see. Mega Man 2016 says, Eric, is your app business self-contained from your consulting, or does your consulting fund your app devs? Is your app business self-contained from your... It's pretty much... this is my so my consulting does fund the app developers. Yeah, I mean, so the consulting does help. It's almost like I don't have two separate pots. Everything kind of goes into the same one. So it's everything comes in and allows us to continue to produce applications and to continue to do things. So a lot of it is when I'm doing our own apps, it's I find it more fun for me to work on my own. So a lot of times I do. So that's why things are behind on a lot of things, because I need to hire somebody to do it. And for some reason, there's a psychological thing in my head where if I have somebody on the team to do it, then that's good. But it's thinking about, what do we want to take a risk on? And we take risks on things all the time. And that's how we got to where we are. But it's just, but yeah, it is. The consulting does help fund the other parts of it. But the revenue that comes in for the apps does. I mean, it all comes in at the end of the day. I look at the final coming in from all sources and make sure that it's above a certain, that our incoming exceeds our outgoing, if you know what I mean. And some months, we're doing all right. Let's see. Alexei says, I'm an Angular developer. I have a project. Cool. Pallavi Cineworld says, blogspot.com allowed to convert an application. I think you've asked me about this before, Pallavi. I'm sorry if I didn't answer it in the comments. You were asking whether or not you can use Blogspot. I really don't know. I think that's something you're going to have to look at the terms and conditions of Blogspot, because one of the things that they don't want you doing is creating, like Apple especially, just doing a web view application where it's not even a website. You just have a web view that's pointing to a website. Because that's not really an app. You're just basically taking it, putting it into the App Store. And I think it's in the terms and conditions of Apple. I think it might be in the new ones of Google Play, if I remember correctly. So I mean, you should have something that's a little bit more than just the website. But if it's Blogspot, I'm not sure if it can. Now, I've seen a lot of applications out there that frameworks. If you take a look at, actually, let's have a look at our old friend. What's it called? Code Canyon. So Code Canyon, I mean, there's loads of them, but codecanyon.net. There's lots of code templates in here for Ionic and Angular. If you're starting out and you just want to do something easy, so let's say Blogger template, Blogger app template, Blogger app. Okay, so let's see, Blogsway, an Android app for your blogger blog. So this is something that, check that, because if they're doing what you're thinking about doing, you might be able to just purchase this for $22 rather than spend a lot of your time and see what they're doing, because I doubt that they're just having a web view that just shows that. They're probably using the API, which is completely different. So you're pulling in the data from there, and that way with the people who have the website have a different experience than the people who don't. And that's just the first one. I mean, that's just a quick Google of it. A lot of the times, there's code out there. So, but if you're building something that's new and totally unique, check to see what they're doing in terms of terms and conditions. Maybe you can even contact that developer and ask him, are you allowed to do this? And I'm thinking about buying it. Are you allowed to do this? He said, yes, you are. And then you can just build it yourself. Let's see. SR says, which drag and drop builder do you like? I played around with a few of them. I like, what was the one I think I like Good Barber was kind of cool. I think all of them were just a little bit too complicated. Like they just, like I thought about doing a reseller for a lot of those things, as I thought when we get clients in that can't afford us to build an app from scratch, and maybe we could use one of these as a reseller account. That's why we were building Project Viaduct, right? But they were all just a little bit too complicated. Like they were almost like a developer. You need developer skills in order to use them. But if you're a developer, you might as well just learn the framework. So, but I think Good Barber was the one I liked the best. When I did look at a lot of them before SR, but that was the one that I did. So let's see. Alexi says, I only read the first part of your question. It was divided into two parts. I'm an Angular developer. I have a project but not the resources to publish it, web host, etc. Any advice how to start? So it depends on why you need. So if you're an Angular developer and you're releasing an application, you don't need a web host unless you're contacting something external. So that's what an Ionic application is. It's the resources inside it. You can have a completely offline Ionic application using Angular, and the pages are served from within the application, so they're actually compiled with inside it. So it's just running in HTML. Now you can't do anything like if you have PHP or Node.js or anything that's the dynamic processing. You can't have that on there. But if you just want to have an application, then you shouldn't need a web host. So I'm not quite sure what you're doing, unless you have something that serves pages online or something like that, and you can connect to something. If you need a web host, you use something like Firebase for free, but you shouldn't need one for using something like Ionic. Ionic's it's a very good framework. I get in such trouble with Ionic developers who just badmouth me all the time because I did that video, but it is a really good framework, and it's very, they thought of everything, and you do not need a web host in order to do it, unless they've changed something in Angular on Ionic 4, but I don't think so. Alexi, any advice how to start? So let's see. Imran Vivo says, which app earns you more revenue? For me, I've talked about it, many videos about it before. It's Ear Agent. It generates most of the revenue, but a lot of them generate the revenue. It's like it still comes in. If you were like, if I were to say to you, if you spend the next 2 days working on an application and it will give you $1 a month, would you do it? And you think, well, just $1 a month, is that it? So, well, you think we have to do a lot more of those applications, and it depends on how long it's live and how long it's there. So over a course of a year, it'll be $12. So, maybe it's not worth it, but over a course of 5 years, it'll be $60, whatever. But it depends on what you do, and then you think, can you do more of those and get people into it? So, but whereas if I said it will generate you $100 per day, you say, yeah, absolutely, but you don't know which one's going to do that. So, so you have to do that. So. All around says, should I buy a template? Yeah, check the terms and conditions. When I was looking at that template there, check the terms and conditions, because it's like one release, whether or not you can change it and everything. But sometimes you could find stuff out there. It's ridiculous sometimes when we build things from scratch and there's things that already can do most of what you want to do. Like you could save yourself a lot of time by purchasing it or using it, but you have to check the licensing of it, and there's a whole legal side of things, and sometimes it's just fun going through and learning how that bit works. But you could also, if you're not sure how something works, you can look at the template and see how they code it. Like we bought one we bought one bit of code in Corona SDK, and we never released it, but it was so interesting to see how they worked on it. Because you look at the documentation, will have little fragments here and there, but to see an entire project was nice. I mean, I probably could have found an open source one, but just to see how other developers work. Let's see. Ice Cream App says there is an app called Calculate Your Age by entering your date of birth and then print it to you. The idea gets 1 million download. Why? Let's have a look. What's the app called? Let's see. Is the app called Calculate Your Age? That's what it's called, by entering your date. All right. Let's go through, and I'm going to share my screen here in a second if I can find it. Yeah, I don't see it. Ice Cream Games. Do you have? Is that the actual name of the application? It seems a bit long. Zohaib Ansari says, I use Java for building Android apps. I don't get people talking about using React Native and other stuff for making apps. What do you use, and what tech should I learn now? Zohaib, I think if you're just going to do Android and you know Java really well, there's no reason to go to something else, right? Yes, that's one thing. Android is always going to support Java. God, that never comes back to me, but that's it. That's as low as you can go in terms of doing Android, unless you did some sort of C thing and you got really, really clever with it. But that's what they want you to use. That's what all the documentation is in, except for Kotlin, of course, which is the new one. Where my concerns about some of the frameworks like React Native and Ionic is that you're always behind the curve. So every Google I/O, they come up with new features, and you're thinking, oh, when can I use that? And then you've got developers scrambling around trying to think, how are we going to implement that? I know with Corona SDK, which is it's not a hybrid, but it's a framework, so which is in Lua, so it sits on top of that. A lot of times they'll come out with breaking changes in iOS especially, and then the forums will be filled with people saying, why isn't this working? And then they're scrambling around, and they always fix it very quickly, but it's just one of these things. It's a simpler process because you're able to build one thing for two platforms. And you think about how these frameworks work, where you have the operating system, which is Android or iOS, and then you have the code which sits on top of it, which that's usually written in. So if you can even go into the source code of these things and see that's written in Java, or it's written in or Kotlin or Swift or Objective-C. So that's what it is, but you're writing something on top of that, and you're able to save yourself a lot of time by doing that to both platforms. Now, if you're really good with the Java, so it adds a little bit of bloat onto it because you have other libraries in there. It adds certain things to it, but it also means you can release to both platforms at the same time. So the APK size will be a little bit bigger, or the IPA size will be a little bit bigger. But a lot of times, like when we do stuff for clients, I explain to them, this will allow us to do the application for two platforms with the same amount of effort. Testing is, you have to check both of them, and occasionally there's little variations in ways you have to do things depending on what you do. Like we have one where we do Bluetooth, and I have to write a little bit of extra code for Android than I do for iOS because the plugin is not handling that stuff. But I hope that makes sense. Solomon Mochuri says, I sent an email and have not yet received any response. Really? I'll have to check on that, Solomon. Did you send it directly to me, or I'll check it, because I do go through and clear down my inbox every day. So if there's something there that I haven't responded to, it may have gone to spam, or I may have maybe misunderstood what you're asking me. Sparrow Paul says, I feel I don't know much. What do I do? You mean like just in general, or you mean about software? Like nobody knows everything. No, I've met developers who know everything. And you know what? You don't want to know them, right? Because they don't learn anything new, right? If somebody goes, I'm the best developer in the world. I worked for this. All right, so I'm going to tell you this story. I worked for this small company where the developer was so full of himself. He was like the head of IT, even though it was like a really small company. And it was like him and another guy, but he was the head of IT, and it was like, I'm the head of IT and all this. So I was brought in to work on something, and the owner really liked me. So I come in, and this guy just hated me because he saw me as a threat. But he was so arrogant. He was so arrogant because I was like, he's like, I don't have any bugs in my code. I don't know that. And I saw his code, right? His code was written by somebody who never has to show his code to people. Like, sometimes we get that way. So, but he was just his whole thing was that a software developer has to be of superior intellect. Like he could take someone who's really, he said I could take someone who's really smart, like a lawyer or a solicitor or whatever, and I could make them into a software developer because they have that high level of intellect. But I couldn't take it with somebody who's like just working in a shop or something like that. And I thought, this guy is so full of it, right? If you met the developers, I know developers who are really good at code, but you wonder how they, how do they survive in the real world? Because it's just, like a lot of things just go wrong. And we all have our strengths, and code is it's not meant for special people. It's meant for people to be interesting. It's just a way of, they don't make it complicated on purpose. It's complicated because it does so much, right? Microsoft has tried for years to simplify things with putting GUIs on it, but it's still better to use command line because you have more control of what things do. It's just you have to learn how that is, right? The programming languages are out there so that people can use them. They come out with new features thinking this will be really useful for people, and they don't intentionally make it hard. It looks hard to you when you're first coming into it because you just don't understand it yet. So start small, do the Hello World programs, and start going that way because it's not impossible to learn. Now, I can remember trying to learn polymorphism and objects using VB6. Right, and I found that whole thing, object-oriented program, to be really complicated because anytime somebody tried to explain it to me, they wouldn't use it the language that I understood. They would say like, well, an object is like a car. A car has methods like drive and stop, or it has properties like number of doors, whatever. And I go, so it's a class? And they go, it could be anything. It's an object. Think about a car. And they kept going back to the car. And whenever I asked a specific question, they would just never answer me. And it was really hard to do. And eventually I got to the point where it just clicked. I thought, okay, right? I saw somebody use it in VB, because in VB you didn't use it as much as you do in C#. You use it all the time. In Java, you use it all the time. Object-oriented programming. But in VB, you didn't necessarily have to. You could just write functions and stuff. And when I saw somebody use it, like another developer on a contract I was in, I saw him using it, and it was just like he was able to instantiate all these classes and just, and it was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. And I was totally sold on the idea. Right, but so let's see. Yeah, don't worry about that. Just start learning small. Start with Hello World. If that's what we're talking about, code. If it's just life in general, join the club. Most of us don't know a lot. Let's see. I've lost my spot here. Sorry. Josie says no Ionic, Eric. Diego says, I was thinking of Ionic too. Thanks. Yeah, Ionic, it's not a bad framework. I mean, I did the video showing my concerns about it. My concern about Ionic, and it was like, if they stop rejecting them, right, what would I do? And if you just have one app, you could fix it. You could do what you need to do, right? But if you have like hundreds of clients coming to you saying, hey, what are we going to do now, Eric? Huh? You're the one who told us to use this framework. Then at that point, then I panic. Now, React Native is not. It doesn't use a web view, and that's the distinguishing thing that I carry between the two of them. So it does use some native components. Flutter, I think, is better in that way. But let's see. Adolfo Maldonado says, any progressive web apps comparable to native? I've seen some impressive ones, and it seems like progressive web apps. There are people who use them they think they're really, really good, and they probably are. I've seen some really impressive ones, but the last thing I heard was there's issues with Safari, and that's always improving. Like, I think progressive web apps will take over. I do think that we're going to get to a point where there's going to be a real, like, the use case for apps is going to be much more specific than it is now. Like, clients call up and say, hey, we need an app because apps are cool, and you think, well, I kind of need a website, right? And it will be this middle thing, this progressive web app. Like, you don't need to install this thing on your phone, but it's something you might use a lot. You want to have offline storage, but it's not something that you need to have that power of a native application. take on all that disk space and everything. And that's why I think it's going to become its own thing. It's going to become the middle bit between the two of them, kind of like the tablet between your phone and your PC, I guess. So let's see. Pallavi says, hello, dear sir. Please help me. Blogspot.com allowed to convert an application? Yeah, I think I've answered that one already. Let's see. Ismail Khan says, is multiplayer online games expensive in response to renting servers? It's a good question. I was looking into PubHub. Is it PubHub? There's one called there's an IO framework called NoobHub, I think it is. We were looking at it a few years ago, and you can use it for multiplayer games. We were using it for drawing applications. So if I draw something on my app, you should be able to see it. We never released it, but we were playing around with it a lot. And so what it was doing was, as I draw, it was taking the coordinates of the line object that I was sending, and it was sending it through to there, and that was sending out to all the subscribers, almost like a socket.io type of thing. So it was like a chat engine almost, but it was just constantly doing. And so if you had something like that, you don't have to pay for something like PubSub, but you do have to host it on your own server. You have to make sure it doesn't go down. You should probably use something like PM2 with monitoring or something so that you can see that it's actually running. So it's possible to do. I don't know what the costs are if you were to use like a paid service. My whole thing about using paid services, and you see them all the time. So you got like for push notifications, there's lots of paid services out there like Airship. Was it Airship something? But it's you think, and there's a very generous free tier. But then you think when you get to the bit where you have to pay for it, then you're kind of locked in. And what if they just go away for no reason? And what if they can't keep going? So let's see. Minute Code says, I'm sorry if I'm so far back on the questions. I'm going to try to keep reading them so when people watch this oh, by the way, for those of you who are watching this and it's not in the live stream, you should have been here, man. We're having a great time, right, guys? So let's see. Minute Code says, I am the fourth semester of Bachelor's in CS. Is it possible to work for a company without a degree? Yes. What about a visa? I think it depends on the visa. Would you suggest working for someone or company for, say, 2 or 3 years? You will get a lot of experience working for somebody else, but it depends on the company. It's and do you need a degree to work for somebody? No, you don't, but it depends on the company. Like I know some people. I think it kind of depends. Like if the person who's hiring you has gone through the whole degree process and they're jilted about it, saying, why should I hire somebody who didn't go through what I went through? Then yeah, they may insist that you have it, but does it help? I don't. Okay, so I don't have a CS degree. I don't have a computer science degree. My degree is in history. This is why I'm skeptical about the whole thing. I got my degree in history, and then I moved out to the UK immediately after I got my history degree, and I started looking for a job anywhere I could get one. And eventually I got one in IT, and I learned as quick as I could, and I never took anything for granted. I was constantly learning. It wasn't a chip on my shoulder, but it was like this. I felt like everybody knew more than I did because they had a computer science degree. And then you discover that they don't, right? They know technologies that are 5, 6, 7 years old, and you're like learning the latest thing because you're reading every day and you're trying to keep up with everything. And you could be the expert on the newest thing while somebody's getting their computer science degree. Now, that might be unfair to people who have a computer science degree, but I think it's more the how hard you work and what you do. So, but like I said, when I hire somebody, I don't even ask if they have a degree. I hired somebody once and I found out they had a doctorate. It was like somebody overseas, and they said, "Oh, I have a doctorate." I was like, "Oh, really? That's cool. That's interesting, right?" I have a bachelor's degree. I have a bachelor's degree in history, but it's never really helped me. I mean, maybe if I went on Jeopardy or something, it might come in handy, but even then. Let's see. Alexei says, I've heard that Apple no longer approve web apps. Yeah, that's what I heard too. I mean, Apple especially. If it's true, does NativeScript count? NativeScript is, my understanding of NativeScript, and having looked at it, is it doesn't run in a web view. So you have these two, React Native and NativeScript, which are JavaScript based, but they're actually serving up native components. So if you do a button, but they also don't use HTML. They use JavaScript, which is good, but they don't use HTML. Even React Native uses a converted markup. So if I do a button and I do the app in both iOS and Android, it's a different button. So it doesn't. But it does have a renderer behind it, but it's not like that. So and when they talk about iOS not supporting web apps, I think what they're really saying there is just an application that's just a website. Like I create an app, it has a web view in it. That web view has a URL associated with it, and I just have an app, and I have it as an app, but it's not. It doesn't really fit with it. It doesn't look like an app. It doesn't feel like an app and everything. But if you did something where you use Ionic, that's actually serving it within the application. So you're actually, it's like its own little web server within the application, and it can work completely offline, and you can do everything, and it looks the same, it feels the same, and it might be a little, people say it's a little bit laggy, but I think that's more to how you code it, and it's always improving because the processor is always improving, but it's still a web view, so that might change at some point too. I mean, I love your channel. Hey, thanks very much, Alexi. SR says, can you come up with a video course on how to make an ebook app? There must be some out there, but I mean, that shouldn't. We did an ebook. We have one ebook. Sorry, what time is it? I don't want to go an hour and 48 minutes like we did last week. But we did a couple of ebooks apps, which we did in Corona SDK. It's not really an ebook; we called it an animated we called it a interactive ebook. So it was like just pages, and you click on things, tap on things like for kids, and it will play audio and stuff like that. But the thing about the ebook app is the repetitive content policy. You just make sure that if you do something that it's not like they don't say you have to combine all these ebooks into one ebook app. Let's see. A Minute Code says, would love to keep a professional environment, but sometimes it's good to go out of context. I think you're really handsome. Thank you, Minute Code. That was just threw that in there. Thanks. If anybody wants to comment on how handsome I am, feel free. I'm getting older. Let's see. Sparrow Paul says, can you check out my app Inspire Me on Google Play Store, and please tell me how I can improve it. Okay, so everyone, we're gonna look. I'm sorry if I'm so far back on these things. I'm gonna quit apologizing. It makes me seem like I'm trying to be more alpha male. Keep reading these books on. Let's see. Okay, so we're looking for Inspire Me. Oh, we might need a bit more on that. So, Sparrow Paul, can you tell me which one it is? Is it this first one? Oh, Sparrow Paul. There's your name right there. Okay, Inspire Me. Cool. The icon. All right. Hi there. Inspire Me is here to inspire users with carefully selected content and thought-provoking inspirational quotes to keep you going. Inspire Me has over 1,000 quotes. Inspire Me. Okay, so let's say if we just changed it. So we got Inspire Me. Daily inspirational quotes. So let's say we changed this and had something of a like a subtitle, just so we could say inspirational quotes, motivational quotes. I would say motivational because you're already using inspire in the title. So we say Inspire Me motivational quotes. Now I don't know how well that would rank because I don't know how popular it is, but that's what we would do. These screenshots are cool because you got the different colors and you're showing the phone, but it would be nice if you had something on there to say more the benefits of it, because you're kind of showing what it does here. And you're just showing the first screen next. But like, let's say if you did something where you said, okay, so let's say you have something on the screenshot says, because that's the first thing they're going to see. Let's say you have something so if they actually get to this point where they go in and they like the icon, we'll talk about the icon here in a minute. But let's say they get to this point and they see that first screenshot. Let's say they say something like, your daily pick-me-up, something. You could, let's say, you can go use some stock footage of somebody in the background, just like, oh, right, and something, life gets you down or whatever. Just tell a story, because right now you're just showing what the app does, right? If you tell a story, so the story, even though it's not explicit, of Ear Agent is you can be a spy. That's the story. That's the thing. One of the language learning apps. The language learning apps is you can learn this language, right? So this would be, what is the story of this application? If you was going to go into this, and I was go in there and say, inspire me. I need motivation. I need something to pick me up, and I go through and I see that. So and we see how that does. So let's say we change the icon a little bit there too. I'm not really sure what would work or what wouldn't. but the icon. So let's say we go inspire me daily motivational daily motivational quotes, and we say and then we talk about what are some things that will come from that we could do, that we'll search on. So let's say, and I'm just spitballing it here, so test this stuff, right? And anybody has anything there, let me know what it does. And let's say we say something like relieves daily depression, seasonal affective disorder, these kind of things that can just make you feel a little bit down, and so your app could help alleviate that. So the story of the app is it'll be your pick-me-up to lift you to a higher mood, all that kind of stuff. So, and what I see now is just the name and that. So that's just my opinion, but anybody else has an opinion, let me know. And that's, change it, try some different stuff, but have a look at the keywords and stuff too. So see what's competitive and stuff like that too. Like if I were to go in here, just to stay on this one, motivational quotes, then we see all these things here, but we're talking about inspirational, and I'm afraid I don't know the difference between the two. I use them interchangeably too often. So you got inspirational quotes, and a lot of these, they all look the same. So yours looks different, but how can we make it stand out a little bit more? And because we go in here, we see so many of them. So maybe even just using inspirational quotes is not enough, because look at how much competition there is for this. And if we do a search on inspire me, how's it doing? So it's not even in the first group here. So let's see. Link says, cool channel, keep up the great work. Thanks for watching, Link. I appreciate it. It really helps that you guys say these kind of things, because sometimes it's this silly thing that every day you drive someplace, get the tripod out of the trunk of the car, set it up, talk. People, what you guys don't see is, like, a lot of times when I'm by a road or whatever, people honk their horn, or usually, or they'll walk their dogs, and sometimes the camera messes up. So I've got like all these clips of me just swearing. Ugh. So let's see. So I appreciate that, Link. Thank you very much. What is the best amount of levels in a game? 10. Actually, it depends on the game. I think if you test it, put some analytics in there, see how far people are getting. If they're not getting through level 6, then that might be too much. So you don't want, last thing you want to do is add 20 levels and nobody gets to them, and just keep doing that. So let's see. Tech with Laughter says, hi, hey. Josie says, we have gone through a situation where we have completed an app for a client at the deliver here. See, would vanish. Any suggestions on how to avoid it? Yes, I have a very good one. Get them to pay a little bit up front. Get them to invest in the application before you do it. Never accept full payment at the end, because they might vanish. What if you don't deliver it 100% of what they want, and they just think, well, screw this. You've done all the work, and even if it's not what they want, what it requires is a little bit more work, a little bit more effort, which is, you have to do it. But if they say, oh, he obviously doesn't get it, and they can leave because they have no skin in the game, then they'll do that, and you're out of it. But if they say, hey, this is wrong, we have to change some things, then you're like, okay, we'll change some things. And even though there's a little bit of friction there, you get through the process of getting it done. You have to understand that they want to get the app done and you want to get it done. But if they haven't invested anything in the beginning and they just bail on you, then you have to get them to commit something. If it's 25% or 50% or something, and it's not so much because you need the money, although you could tell them that in order to get it done. It's just so that they are invested in the project, because you are 100% invested in it. You have to think about it. You're not just rambling on. You get me started, Josie. So it's not just that you're doing it for them, you're getting paid at the end. You are giving them a line of credit. You are giving them a line of credit for the work that you're about to do, and they have to do it. So you can say they have to make some sort of investment in the beginning, and it's not because you don't trust them. It's because I think you have to think about what would be going through their head. They're thinking, well, it's kind of expensive now, and it looks so good at the beginning, and but they make sure. But what you want them to be thinking is, oh God, I've already paid all this money for it, and it's not exactly what I want. But so what do we have to do to get this working, right? So it's it's not it's not you versus them. You have to work together, and sometimes it's going to feel like you versus them, but you have to work together and produce the application and get it done too, where they're happy with it and you're happy with it. Let's see. Thank you so much. Thank you so. Okay, sorry, I'm way behind. Liam Phillips says, "Hi Eric. Hi chat. Speaking of Firebase, have you had to implement the search in Firebase? It seems like one of the missing parts." Yeah. You know what we did? So that's funny you mentioned that, because we had that. We had a couple problems with Firebase. We had one application where we just wanted to have a search, like just a wildcard search, and we had to put this Elastic server engine in. I don't even know why. It was just such a crazy thing. We wanted to have a search from the server, and we had to set up a whole nother Elastic server, and we use Heroku for it, just in order to do a search. And it just like, you just need like a light query on that, on that, and it was crazy. And then the other one is we have an application that does have that wildcard search in it, but we also have a huge download limit on it, so we're just trying to go through and sort that. And I think that's the reason why we got to learn, because it's downloading the entire database, and you can do the search that way, and we just need to get around that. So there's a few issues there, but yeah, I get it. If you're doing a wildcard search in Firebase, it's every solution I was getting to, that can't be right. But WWE Wrestling says, "Hey, Overpass, hey, how's it going? Are you really WWE Wrestling?" Let's see. Sorry, I lost my place. Josie says, "I want to get them into ASO. Do you recommend any way how I could learn?" There's a lot of Udemy courses. I mentioned today that we should do some sort of some basic ASO stuff. There's a lot of stuff out there. If you go to Udemy, the thing about Udemy is these courses are like $200, $300, but then they're always on sale, like for $10. So you could do that. And there's also lots of channels out there that you could look into and stuff. So I mean, and just test things as you go. So let's see. AJ says, fan or AdMob or both with mediation? I would say both with mediation. So use AdMob with fan as mediation because that way you could always turn a Facebook audience network off if you need to. So like if it's not producing, you can. The downside is you have the binaries in there, which might add some space to your app, but you could always, you could always do it that way, and then you could turn it off. So through AdMob, you could turn it on for certain countries and not others, depending on how it goes. Let's see. No service. Okay. Alexi says, "Thanks for the answer. It's a large-scale project. I'd say the reason because I want to give a service, I need a DP for users and products, etc." Yeah, I mean, there's lots of, you can use Firebase, which is not a SQL database, but it's, or you can set up your own, or use Heroku. Actually, use Heroku because then you get the sandbox and you can at least code with it, and then that way you can demonstrate it to them. And like the next version up was like $7 a month or something, so you could do something there too. And there's lots. I mean, look at DigitalOcean. You can get a server for really cheap. It depends on what you need it to do. Do you think that, Josie says, do you think design patterns are must-have knowledge? No, they're not a must-have knowledge, but they're really good knowledge to have because you get to see how other things work. So there's a book over here called Head First Design Patterns on my bookshelf, which is really good at explaining how to do it. And it's like the Gang of Four. Is it the Gang of Four that did the original design patterns, like the singleton and everything like that? And they're really good to learn, just to see how these things work. When I read that, I started thinking in the code in a different way, like the more detached way of, how do we decouple this from that? And sometimes you talk to junior developers, they just don't get it. They're like, if we decouple this from this, then we could do another provider that does this database format or this, and they're like, that will never happen. But I do think it's a good thing to learn. But you have to be of a certain level to do it. Like if I had read that early in my career, I never would have got it. But it took a while. So even then when I was reading it, it was like for me, I found reading about design patterns to be intellectually stimulating and hard just to keep a grasp on, because if my mind wandered for a moment, I would lose it. You know when you're learning something new like that. All Around says, "Sir, can I clone an app and make money, or should I come up with an idea?" I think you should come up with an idea, but just because, I mean, if both options are available to you, come up with an idea. WWE Wrestling says, "Hi Eric, I recently published my app on Play Store. Also, I started some AdWord campaign and got 500 plus downloads." That sounds good. Did it pay off? I mean, that's one of the things about the AdWords campaigns is you can get the downloads, and if it's almost like you could do like a trickle thing, so like $10 a day, and you would get, say, some users, but like let's say it's paying the 50 cents per install at the end of the day, then and you're not making 50 cents per install, then that's not going to sustain. But let's say you're going to put like a lot of money in a single 24-hour period. That lot of money might give you a lot of downloads and push you up the rankings. Then you get more organic installs. Like if you had like a big budget, rather than spread it out, and you're not making enough for the user, it'd be better to do it all in one condensed period, I would imagine. But I have to say I've never done it. I'm more of a, I don't like to spend huge amounts of money on ads. Actually, no, I have done that. There was one where I've done that, and I had like 30,000 downloads on it. It was like really good, but it didn't sustain once I removed the ads. So it should. Let's see, Meow Studios. Anybody got in trouble yet because of the new policies on Google? I have not. I know a lot of people saying I've removed all my apps. I'm like, I don't know if I want to do that. I think I'm hoping it doesn't bite me in the end. I did remove Ear Assist. Ear Assist no longer exists. Let's see. Ben says, hey Eric, how's it going? Hey, how's it going, Ben? Alexei says, last question for today. Performance wise, C# or web app? C#. Because is there a notable difference? Well, you could do. I mean, when you say web app, you could do C# as a web app in ASP. C# is faster than JavaScript because it's compiled, but it also depends on how you write really bad C# and it'll be much slower than JavaScript. And also JavaScript is portable. You can put it to lots of different places. You run on the client, you run on the server. So that's why I like JavaScript, even though it's a non-compiled language. And there are downsides to compiled languages too. Like I said, I like the flexibility of having the dynamic language that JavaScript is, and I think Ruby's that way too. But that's it. So all around says, how much money should I spend to advertise my game? Yeah, it depends. It depends on how much you have. Yeah, Shivam, thanks. PubNub. Did I say PubHub? PubNub. And then there's one called Noob Hub, I think. Well, I'm really. WWE Wrestling says, but app not comes with result keyword motivational quotes. It comes on with top motivational quotes. Oh, does it? Let's see. Rodrigo shows up late, an hour late. Let's see. Ramton says, hey, Eric, have you ever tried Ogre? If your answer is yes, what do you think about it? Okay, so Ogre. Let's talk about Ogre, because Ogre contacts me all the time saying, hey, have you ever thought about monetizing your app? And I think, yes. I talk about it every day on YouTube. And then they say, you should use Ogre and all this stuff. And then when I do drill down into it, there was something about them not supporting certain countries, or like they supported a few countries, but I was like, I needed more global. Like they didn't have a big presence in the US or something like that when I was looking into it. There was something along those lines. And I went through and said, okay, what do I have to do? I'll give it a try. And then it just became more trouble than it was worth to put it in. So I didn't bother with it. And the fact that they're so eager for me to put it in there, it kind of put me off a little bit. So have I tried it? I put it into the code. I don't even know if I've released it. I don't think I released it. So to answer your question, no. But I just there was some reason why I didn't. So Nijam MP3 lyrics. Hey Eric. Hey, how's it going? Let's see. JT says, would you recommend Unity as a mobile game development engine? It feels bloated for 2D development, but has the most transferable skills. Yeah. See, we use Corona SDK, and that has no transferable skills because you're learning Lua, which I can't. I think there's some other places you can use it, but at least with Unity, you can use C#, you can use JavaScript, you can use all these languages which are very transferable, like you use other places. But I've never really used Unity, and then you can do 3D development. But every time I go through look at the 3D, the Unity environment, the IDE, it just, I don't like the, I just don't like the dependence on the IDE, and maybe you don't need the IDE, but it just. Yeah, and it's complicated to me. And I've purchased tutorials on Udemy and actually done them, but it's like, so I lost my place again. Let's see. I'm near the end. So who's still with me? 34 people still here. Thanks for sticking with me, guys. Ismail says, what's the best way to market your app out? Do you mean like best way to market it? There's so many different ways to answer that question. Sparrow Paul says, thanks much. I'll work on Inspire Me. I appreciate it. Hey, no problem. I hope it helps. Yeah, but again, that's all opinion, Sparrow Paul. That's you try some different things. Think about it from the user's point of view, and also think about it from all these other applications that are out there. Provenda Sharma's Gaming says, are you a fan of BuildBox? What is BuildBox? I can't remember what BuildBox is. Let's see. George Ruley says, how do you live stream? Hey, you guys. That's George Ruley. We're related, obviously. For You Play Game Studio says, you use emojis in store description? I don't think so. This is stupid, but I just recently found out. Rodrigo showed me today that you can put HTML tags in the description. And I've seen people do it on Google Play, and I was like, I just haven't gone through and tried it. So I don't think you could do emojis, but I could be wrong. I think it would depend on how the browser renders them, I suppose. Let's see. Divish Prasad says, hi, I'm trying to get into app development, but I find coding very challenging. Is there a way to become fluent at it and be able to write code off the top of my head? Yeah, I just start. You gotta have to start somewhere, so you might as well start at the Hello World program. Think about what language you want to learn, and the language you want to learn depends on what you want to do. If you're looking for a job, then you might want to learn something mainstream. If you're looking for something cutting edge, then not. If you're looking for apps only, then you could go something like, if you're looking for apps only, you want to do iOS and Android, you can go down the Flutter route, learning Dart, which is like, you're learning Dart, so it's not the skill you can use everywhere else, but it might pick up and get some traction later. If you're looking to do something where you have a like JavaScript is a language you can use in so many places. You can use it in the web server. You can use it on you can use it in the web pages. You can use it on the server. You can use it in React Native or Ionic, or use it lots of different places. That's why JavaScript it used to be that JavaScript was a language that nobody liked because it was just, all you would do, like in the early 2000s or whatever, you could do a lot with it, but not all browsers supported it the same way. So I read this big book on JavaScript, and I could do all this cool stuff like multiple arrays and have all this stuff happening on the page. But it wasn't until Ajax and XML HTTP came out that people really started doing lots of, where the page doesn't have to refresh every time you do stuff. And there was a really good book called JavaScript: The Good Parts by, I'm thinking Douglas Coupland, but I know that's not him. I can't remember what the name of the guy was, but it was really focusing on JavaScript. And then you have all these frameworks come out, and it's like this. It's just this really fun thing to learn. And I know there's been offshoots of that, like CoffeeScript and TypeScript, which will transpile into JavaScript. But I'd still like just using the JavaScript myself. Of course, if you want to get a corporate job, I think C# is probably good. And so yeah, it depends. But you got to start from somewhere. So. Let's see. Alexei says, really, G2G, late already. Keep the good work, man. So, Zenobusi Tasak says, I am a back-end developer. You think it's very useful for me to learn front-end, for example, WPF? I completely do not have a sensing of beauty, if you know what I mean. You know what? I don't know. See, for me, I think about this as I've done a lot of back-end stuff, and I've done a lot of front-end stuff. But I also know people who do just back-end stuff, and they are fantastic with it. It's almost like, they're really good at that, and they don't really like the front-end stuff. So why learn that? Like, I'm not really good with graphics, so I couldn't design my own icon. I designed the Overpass logo, and everybody's got an opinion about it. But so I hire a designer. So partnering up with someone who does that. So if you're a back-end server person, I mean, that's a really good skill to have. You could be the jack of all trades who does both. But now it might be good to learn some of it just to see how it works. You could always get other designers to help you with it. And we talk about the front end stuff. even like a web page. I think I'm a pretty good designer in terms of CSS and HTML and stuff like that. But it wasn't until I worked with it was at BBC Worldwide. I had a contract, and they assigned me a designer to work with, and I was like, I don't really need a designer. I'm okay with this. And I was like, so I've got all these nested tables inside, and there's like, this one has a border and a gradient, and this is so it was very clean and efficient, and I thought it was really good looking. And then, but she was like, she didn't even think in terms of HTML. She was just thinking about what would be the best way to do this. So we had this big oval, and then like inside it was some text, and then there was another oval overlapping over this, and everything looked like it was all bubbly and just, it didn't conform to HTML standards. And of course I had to go through and find a way to make that happen, which was slicing that image up and put it, using it. This will be the background, this will be the foreground, this will be this, all this stuff. But it wasn't saying I'm going to start with the technology and think what can I make that looks good with it. It was like getting someone blue skying it and saying, I'm going to look at this from a designer's point of view, how this could work. And it was actually taught me a lot about it, thinking, well, you know what, maybe a designer is good for these kind of things. So Rafael says, hey Eric, can we do Amazon affiliate marketing from within mobile apps? I actually don't know that. I don't know the answer to that, because I've asked about it, and I think the big benefit of affiliate marketing, I think it might be in the terms and conditions that you can't. I think you need a website, but check to find out. Check with them, because I think I looked into that before, and I think one of the downsides is the big benefit of Amazon is that if somebody clicks on a link, then it puts a cookie, and then when they come back and buy something else, then you have like 24 hours before they make that purchase. But I have looked into that before, and I never really got a solid answer on it. Let's see. Shivam, you're learning Flutter. See, you know what? We need Flutter developers. We should talk. Let's see. Ashwin says, how to advertise so as to reach the mass downloads with cheap rates. So try to get a keyword that's not exactly mainstream. If you're doing it based on keyword, if you're just doing it like you just want to get mass downloads and you're not particular about who they are, I would say go with just do an ad mob campaign and go with like put your average click bid to be like 1 cent, right? And you probably won't get any impressions. Put it to 2 cents and you might get a few, and then put it to 3 cents and you might, and then at least you'll get something going through, and you can start building on that and getting those clicks. Let's see, what else do we have? Haytham, hey, how's it going? Have you ever faced mobile getting overheated by your app? If yes, how did you tackle the problem? No, I haven't had that problem. But I would imagine there must be something. What I would do, are we talking about Android or iPhone? I think I would hook it up to Logcat, or I'm trying to, is there, so like in Xcode, there's a thing in there that you could check the memory of the device, and you can see that. I'm trying to think, is there something like that in Android Studio? I think there is. I think there's something where you can see the memory usage within it, because you can see there's something. It's probably, I would imagine you have a loop that's not stopping or something like that. It's just really grinding it or something. But that's just, I would check that out. Divesh says, thanks for your response. I plan to focus on mobile app development, but currently upload to Google Play Store only. Is the iOS store still more dominant, or has it changed? It's still changing. I think, Android is more dominant, but I still think iOS is a large part of it. I don't think we can ignore iOS yet, because, I have an iPhone, but the reason I have an iPhone is because it's for development purposes. But it's a nice phone. A lot of people, you got to think about who the audience is. A lot of people, they just want to get the cheapest phone, so they'll go for Android, or they want to get the nicest phone, so they go for Android, or they just want to get the phone that all their friends have, so they go for iPhone. So, iPhone is a nice phone, but it's you can't. When we released our first app, it was Android only, and the first thing people said is, "Oh, how do I get it on my iPhone?" And it was just so disappointing. It was so disappointing you couldn't help them. So, let's see. Shivam, I've increased my pace of learning since your last live stream. Yeah, Shivam, let me know how that's going for you, because I'm really, this is the language I want to learn, and we're looking at processes going forward. We've got 3 new projects that started this week in React Native, and React Native is good, but I'd prefer Flutter on some of these things. So, so that's me. So let's see. Oh, so Liam says that Amazon affiliate does support mobile apps. I've looked into this myself. I thought you needed to have a domain. I think that was it when I was looking into it, but maybe I'm wrong. Josie says you have face. Yes, I've so Josie's face overheating problems, and it's due to memory leakage. Yeah, that's what I say. Find, see if you could do memory. And then Sandeep says the iPhone XS is coming. Yeah, you know, Apple might seem like they're on their way. They're down for the count, but they're just one iPhone release away from everybody flocking back to them. So I would say, you know, don't discount them just yet. But anyway, so I think I've answered all the questions. If I missed anything, is anybody? Let me know if I missed anybody. Ben, I'm going fine. Let's see. Okay, so everybody, thank you so much for. Okay, one more question here. What will be a better way to design an inventory Android app? An inventory app, it's like something that takes inventory. I've thought about this. Like if you're going to do an inventory app, I would say you need to have a barcode scanner, and ideally you would have some sort of back-end server engine, so you have something that's really quick, so that I could go beep, 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 and it would calculate how much of what I have. So, and you can sell that to a client who works at a factory, assuming that we're talking about the same thing. Liam says you could choose a website or an app store page. Oh, for your app was setting it up. They might. I wonder if they changed it recently, or if I'm just didn't see it the first time I did. Oh, maybe we should look into that. Ooh, because AdMob, you know, maybe get some affiliate links in there. Let's see. Divesh says it's 3 a.m. in Australia time before I go to bed. When is the next live stream? Next live stream would be next Friday at 5 p.m. So, Friday is takeaway night, so I think I'm going to pick up fish and chips on the way home, possibly maybe pizza. I had pizza last week, so we'll see. You know, so I'm yeah, you got those other things too to tend with. Josie says I have an inventory app with a website. Cool. Someone probably asked this, but what do you think of Flutter? I think I've only Maxim Capetier says, what do I think of Flutter? I think I've only just played with it. I've done the going through the tutorials and everything, and I think it just looks like a really cool and slick language. And I think because it has Google behind it, it's gonna do really well. I like the idea of being able to code it in Android Studio or in IntelliJ, which is what I use sometimes, and just have it code for iPhone too. So you just run them on both. Because I'm on a Mac, I could do both of that. So let's see. What is it? And Zobia says, full stack cheater, hee hee. Pizza. Do you think I should go for pizza? Maybe. You're great. Funzone said you're great. Thanks, Funzone. Everybody, thanks so much for joining the live stream this week. Sorry, my throat's starting to go. I know I ramble on a lot and I talk really fast, but thanks for sticking with me. Thanks for anyone who's subscribed this week and everyone who's subscribed in general to the channel, because I really appreciate it. That's like, it doesn't really count for anything, but it just kind of makes me feel like, you know, the subscribers go up, and it makes me feel like it's worth doing. And hopefully we have some good videos coming up this week. I've already recorded videos up until Monday, so I have a haircut today, but tomorrow my hair is going to look long again for a couple of days. But that's because we have the next few videos. So I will talk to you guys next week on the live stream, and I'll talk to you tomorrow on the daily video. Thanks very much. I'll talk to you guys later. Have a good weekend.
Taking this blindfold off to see what this life's all